We are pleased to have back on our set Jeff Hills, who's the owner of Healthy Appetites. Welcome back, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk mostly about allergies because it's March, it's going into April, and it is allergy season. I, for one person, don't know the difference between allergies and intolerances. So can we start with that before we get into actual allergies?
That is typically more an issue for food allergies, where certain things you will be allergic to,
Okay.
like peanuts or
Okay.
shellfish.
Yep.
And other things you might be intolerant to. And the difference is technically if it's an allergy, allergies involve your mast cells, and those are the cells in your body that release histamine.
Okay.
So if it's an allergy, those will be involved.
Okay.
And when you get that histamine reaction that is just out of control, that's when you get, your throat closing
Yeah.
and you need the EpiPen.
Right.
And intolerances are going to be things where you just don't handle them properly. And the big one that I think of for food would be gluten. So you can be allergic to milk, allergic
Right.
to wheat, allergic to any number of foods, but you'd be intolerant of gluten because when you have an issue with gluten, it doesn't involve your mast cells.
Okay.
So it does massive damage if you eat gluten and you're sensitive, if you have celiac disease.
Right.
It'll do massive damage to the cilia in your intestines. Those like the little finger-like
Yes.
things that
Yep.
stick up and
Yep.
kind of absorb your nutrients.
Yes.
And those will be kind of eventually just be kind of smashed
Which is
flat.
bad because you really need those.
Yeah, and that's
yeah.
because you're intolerant, but it's not technically an allergy.
Okay. So when people come in looking for relief from allergies, what types of allergies are most common and how do you help them?
Well, this time of year, airborne allergies are the big thing. So,
that's
hay fever,
Yep.
However it's kind of typically referred to.
Yeah.
And there's any number of things you can do to fight that.
Okay.
So, supplementally, the thing that we typically recommend is something called quercetin, which is a really potent antioxidant. It's a bioflavonoid derived usually from blue-green algae.
Okay,
And
from the sea.
It helps make your body make less histamine,
Okay.
which is kind of a nice way to go in that, most of the things you take that would be, the OTC things like Claritin and
Right.
things like that
Yeah.
will be histamine blockers.
Right, that's an antihistamine.
Yes,
okay, right.
exactly.
That
So
you
they're gonna-
always say, take an antihistamine.
So it's nice if you can have something that's going to kind of reduce that response in the
Right.
first place.
And is histamine the thing that makes your eyes water and
Oh, yeah, and the nose run
and the nose
yeah.
run and all that. So you know when you have it. And so rather than treating it with an antihistamine, you can possibly treat it with something more natural.
Something that's going to just reduce your output of the histamine in the first place. So that's you're going to see that in most of the allergy formulas that you see in a health food store.
Okay.
That, and then there's an herb called stinging nettle,
I've heard of
which
that.
is commonly used for allergies as well. And you're going to see that in a lot of formulas. Something you don't see in a lot of allergy formulas yet,
Yeah.
but you're going to start seeing in the future will be an herb called butterbur.
Okay, what does that do?
And butterbur is a fantastic antihistamine that has been in Europe compared head-to-head to the over-the-counter drugs that we sell in this country.
Okay.
And it performed as well as they did without any side effects.
All right.
So the side effects you typically get with the antihistamines is drowsiness.
Drowsiness, right.
So you get none of that with the butterbur. Butterbur is also fantastic for migraines
Oh,
and for urinary incontinence. So it's a really kind of
it's a natural ingredient
It's a
that does a
multi-purpose
lot of
herb. It
things.
does a lot of
That's
great
awesome.
things.
Okay, so that's outside allergies. Now, a lot of people are spending an awful lot of time of their day inside, in offices, things like that. What about allergies to dust and to things that are just in the environment that you're in, that you're sitting in and you're working in? Can you take something that'll help with that?
The same things that work on the outdoor allergies, the hay fever,
same thing
will
applies.
work on the indoor
Okay.
allergies. Specifically for that, though, there are some great homeopathic remedies that target mold, dust, and yeast.
Okay.
And we recommend those to anybody who's tried other things and hasn't had success.
Okay.
Or if you're sensitive to medications, because homeopathy is something that's very safe and will not get any sort of negative reaction from anybody. It's
Okay.
safe for everyone and can't interfere with other medications you're taking.
Now, I have a question on that, with that statement you just made. A lot of times, with a drug you take, you can look up the tests and the results of the years' worth of studies that have been done on the effectiveness, the efficacy of a certain drug. Is there the same thing for the efficacy of supplements and things that you suggest people use, or is it more that people just tell you? They just come in and say, "This worked for me, it worked for my daughter, it worked for my neighbor." I mean,
Well, I mean, on my end, of course, I see that. I get the people who
Right,
come in.
you
So,
do,
so I get
exactly.
actual face-to-face
Right.
feedback. As far as the testing goes, things aren't tested quite the same way that drugs are.
Right.
That's a very expensive, long, drawn-out
Which is why drugs
process.
cost so much, right?
Well, that's one of the reasons.
One of the reasons.
There's all kinds of other reasons
Yes,
for that
yes.
too. But there's typically small studies. There are a lot of university studies done on
Yes.
the different
Yeah.
supplements that are out there.
Right.
But they're not done quite like the drugs. So they're typically smaller studies.
Yep.
A lot of them are done overseas.
Right. We don't do a lot
because-
in this country with
yeah,
homeopathic
unfortunately, not as much
medicine
as
at
we
all.
should.
Yeah. Right. But I think the trend is going there, at least to look at that as an alternative.
There's more interest from the public.
Right.
And like everything else, it's very market driven.
Yes.
So if there's interest in things that are going to cause less side effects,
Right.
then the people who have money and are going to be able to do the testing and do the
Right.
development of the
Right.
products will become interested in them.
Right. Right.
So we're seeing more of that.
That's good, and that's good. And we'll
I think that's a
follow
step
that
in the right
trend.
direction.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Now, as far as the foods we eat, are most of our allergies that are like really sudden from foods, like all of a sudden a peanut allergy, or somebody is seafood and you see their face blow up? I mean, is it mostly food that have these really, really radical reactions?
Those are the ones we all know. We all know the peanut reaction
Yes.
or the tree nut reaction.
Right.
And there's 8 common food allergens. So you've got peanuts,
Yep.
tree nuts,
Yep.
soy,
Yeah. Soy. Yep.
dairy, fish, shellfish, wheat, and corn. Those are the
Wheat.
8 common allergens.
Is that the gluten?
Actually, you can actually have an allergy to other components in wheat,
Of wheat,
that are
okay.
not the gluten.
Oh, really?
Wheat's tough for a lot of people because a lot of people are allergic to wheat and a lot of people are sensitive to gluten. So that's a tough one.
Wow, okay. And do the same things apply? Are there things that people can take for each of those 8 issues with food?
I mean, if you have a response to peanuts or shellfish,
Yeah.
it's typically a little outside the realm of supplementation.
Yes,
That's
then
more-
you're in trouble,
That's
yeah.
a job for the EpiPen,
Right,
I think,
right,
more than anything.
Thank God for those
but,
EpiPens.
Most of the time people don't have that severe of a reaction,
Right.
but we all know the
Yes.
the child in
Yeah.
in the neighborhood that
Yeah.
has the peanut allergy
Right.
that is deathly allergic. We've heard people
Yeah,
die from
it's not funny. It's
yes,
not
it's,
a funny.
it's a serious,
it's a very serious
allergy.
thing.
I mean, fortunately, most of the allergies aren't like that. That's typically not the reaction with corn
Right.
or with wheat.
Right.
It's more with shellfish, fish, tree nuts,
Yes,
peanuts. Those
yes,
are the ones that
yeah.
tend to get that sort of response.
Severe
So
response.
the ones that are more common, like dairy,
Yeah, it's more of
you're
an
not gonna get that
annoyance.
response.
Yeah. Now, is there anything that we can do at this time of year to prevent allergies? By being super healthy and having all kinds of a good diet and good supplements, can we reduce our chance of have a reaction to allergies, or if you have it, you have it?
Well, something that people do this time of year, and this is the time of year to start if you're going to consider doing something like this, is if you've got airborne allergens, if you've got hay fever,
Yep.
then what people do this time of year is they get local honey. Now, the local honey, for instance, the stuff that would be in a store like ours, would be often raw
Yeah.
in local honey. So
Yeah.
it's not heated, it's local,
Yeah.
and that'll have some of the pollen
In
that
it.
occurs around here. And people do it almost to kind of develop a resistance
Yep.
to
Take a little bit at a time. Yep. So that
before it gets out in the air. Like,
that's
right,
a really good idea.
and people do that. The issue people have is they start too late.
Yeah. Right.
So,
So,
you know,
you need
you-
the preemptive strike.
Do it. If you're going
Yeah.
to do it, do
Yeah.
it now.
Yeah. Good
And
information.
if you do it too late, the problem you're going to have is
Now you just have to treat it.
you're throwing gas on the fire.
Yeah,
You've
right.
already got the symptoms.
Right.
And now you're taking something that's adding more pollen.
To the right,
That's
right,
not the way
right,
to go.
right.
So start it now, build it up.
Okay. Interesting.
You should be good.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having
And we'll
me.
have you again.
Great.
Okay. And now we go right back to Brian.